What I thought would be great for everyone in the audience is to get a better sense of the backgrounds of the utilities that each of our guests is representing here. So I'd like each of you to take just a moment or two to describe a little bit about your utility, which I think will help everyone in the audience understand the various different perspectives you will bring to the discussion today.
Great, I guess I'll go first.
Why not, Wade?
AEP Texas is a regulated transmission and distribution utility in the ERCOT portion of Texas. We are investor-owned. We serve roughly 1 million homes and businesses in South Texas, West Texas, and we go up in through parts of North Texas. We serve probably 50% or more of the Texas coast. Our largest city is Corpus Christi, so we have some urban jurisdiction there. Then we go up all the way down to Brownsville. We don't serve Brownsville, that's a municipal utility, but we serve all the way up the border to Presidio, and then we go to the other border with Oklahoma up near Vernon and Childress. So we have about 97,000 square miles, little urban, little rural.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Yeah, Austin Energy is a vertically integrated, municipally owned utility. As you heard, our city council, which Mark is a former member of, actually is our governing body, if you will. And so we serve 437 square miles, a very dense service territory, however, that includes not only the city of Austin, but many surrounding communities, Lakeway, Westlake, and some of the smaller communities around the Austin area. So we have the opportunity to still serve our customers exclusively, not being a part of the retail deregulation in Texas. And that means we also provide them the generation, the distribution, transmission, customer service. We do all of that work for our customers in-house.
Thank you. John.
Great, thank you, Christine. Pedernales Electric Co-op is a member-owned, nonprofit distribution utility. We're one of about 900 electric cooperatives in the United States that cover about 70% of the landmass of the U.S. in aggregate. Pedernales is a 8,100 square mile territory. And what's very interesting about our territory is that we have two distinct geographic regions. One of those regions is about 4,100 square miles and is on average about 2 accounts per mile. The eastern territory that we serve is about 4,100 square miles as well, and is about 18 accounts per mile. And in aggregate, in total, we serve about 260,000 accounts. What's very unique from a member service and technology standpoint is the way that different technologies and opportunities play out across the vastly different geographic regions that we serve. So thank you. Appreciate the ETS team allowing us to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And Mark, why not a little bit of a background on Bluebonnet?
Bluebonnet is also an electric co-op. John's being modest. Pedernales is actually the largest co-op in the United States and one of the more significant. We just try to be one of the better ones. We're about a third of that size. We have 85,000 meters, but 15 residential to commercial. 12,000 miles of line. So we're actually a very rural utility next to some significantly urban areas. So if you live in this part of the world, you know, we serve the Outlet Mall, but then we go all the way almost to Houston, kind of in that corridor between Austin and Brenham. Both of our co-ops, if you're a history buff, were in Lyndon Johnson's congressional district, young Congressman Johnson. And it's not an accident that his headquarters was in Johnson City and our headquarters was in Giddings because that anchored Congressman Johnson's district. So we both have our roots back in the 1930s and the New Deal era.
Well, thank you very much. Audience, I'm going to start with some questions here, but I do want you to start thinking about questions that you would like to ask because when we reach a certain point, I'll be turning to you and you can ask questions of the panelists as well. So start lining up your questions. But what I'm going to do is start with you, Wade, with the first question. And since we're in Texas, I thought we want to focus in on the deregulated Texas retail electricity market. So as an investor-owned utility, an IOU, you've been directly impacted as AEP. So what's working and what needs to be improved?
I think you heard this morning, one of our larger customers gave the keynote address. One of the things that's working well in the ERCOT is that customers are now, they have choice. And a big piece of that is the deployment of the smart meters, which are giving real-time information, which I think are allowing different offerings to those customers. You had him heard him talk a little bit about pay-as-you-go or prepaid plans that work for customers. You heard about text messaging, telling customers how their energy consumption is affecting, their pricing. You're starting to see time of use pricing, and I really think that's been a key that's been missing when you're trying to sync up energy efficiency and demand. It was the disconnect between the wholesale market and the retail customer from a time of use perspective. I've been in this industry for about 25 years. My wife asked me, she's not here so I can tell on her. She asked me just the other night, she goes, should I wait and run the dishwasher? I can hit this 4 or 6 hour delay. Should I wait and run it at 2 in the morning? Would that help? Well, yeah, but right, 25 years. But it's because the cost never really synced up, right? I talked about it'd be good to do it off peak and it'd be good to push it to a later time. But until the cost really started impacting, it didn't make a big difference. Today, because of the smart meters that many of us have deployed in ERCOT, we're seeing the retail electric providers that can make different offerings to customers. We have roughly 108 retail electric providers that sell services to end-use customers through our wires. So that's working. A challenge is really customer education. We've been deregulated for a while now in Texas, and customers still aren't always clear. I read the other day, there's still 1,000 people a day that move to Texas. Most of those folks move from a market that's nothing like what we have in ERCOT. So when we tell them, well, you need to get an easy ID, and then you need to go pick a rep, and then you need to call us, and we can get you set up, that's just like speaking a foreign language to them. And so I think customer education is still one of the things that needs to be worked on. And to let customers know that you've got this smart meter, you can go out there today and register that smart meter. You can go to smartmetertexas.com and whether your rep's providing that information to you or not, you can look and see your usage the previous day and start affecting your energy consumption.
Well, as you mentioned, customer education is part of the challenge that first speaker talked about. 6 minutes in a month that the average consumer thinks about energy at all. So, yeah, that is quite a big haul there in terms of getting people educated. Cheryl, same question. You come at it from a slightly different perspective. How has this worked or not worked for your utility?
Yeah, we come at it from a very different perspective in that our customers are still our customers. They don't have an opportunity to engage in the retail marketplace. But that's a real challenge and a burden that's placed on Austin Energy and others like us, is that if we're going to have the opportunity to maintain our customer base, we need to make sure that we're keeping up with many of the same things. We do have smart meters deployed. We do have to have programs that simulate some aspects of choice that customers can choose, whether that's a green energy option. If somebody wants 100% green energy, we do have products available to allow our customers to engage in that type of product. But it really challenges us to look at the value that we provide to a customer. Because if you don't have choice, you still want to have a good, in fact, you have to have a better relationship, perhaps, with that customer because you want them to be very satisfied with the services that they get from you. And because our customers are connected to us, it lets us really focus in on what do they want. Do they want green energy? How important is reliability? What types of customer service do they need, whether that's online customer care or answering a phone? All of those things are things that we have to constantly challenge ourselves to be better and better at because that's the customer expectation. They want timely information. They want good information when outages do occur. We focus first on reliability and have an incredibly reliable system. But when things do go wrong, we're pretty active in trying to alert customers to what can you expect in terms of a restoration time. And so our challenge is really keeping up with what others are doing and making sure that we either are delivering that same level of service or perhaps even a little bit more with solar rebates, energy efficiency rebates, some things that not every organization can continue to offer that we really excel at and deliver widely across our service territory to our customers.
Well, thank you, because I do think that you're onto something about the lack of competition, the lack of a choice might be rankling to some people. So providing that delight in the customer experience could really make a difference that avoids that. John, I'd like to turn the same question to you from a cooperative perspective. What have your observations and experiences been, and how has that had an impact on your utility?
Sure, thank you, Christine. Certainly as an electric distribution cooperative and like our municipal counterparts, we share in that we have an irrevocable opportunity to opt in to customer choice if you're talking about the Texas deregulated market. So, you know, our co-op, we've been at this for 75 years in terms of serving our members, providing valuable services, doing that in a high quality manner, in a high level of responsiveness, and doing that with a focus on cost controls and stability in the rates. So it's not a small decision or a small contemplation to look at the retail electric market in Texas and contemplate what that might or might not mean for Pedernales members and for our consumers. We've been keenly focusing on, for the last year or so, studying that space and looking at the last 10 years or so, 10 years plus now, of retail competition in the state and what's worked and what hasn't worked. Certainly, there's been some separation along the way regarding the retail cost, the competitive cost have not performed as well over the years with the municipal and cooperative space on average. However, those trend lines are getting very, very close here in the recent time frame. Costs in Texas have been coming down, and so we're looking at this very closely. But there are a lot of pitfalls that we have to make sure that we avoid and that we avoid on behalf of our members. We don't want to add complexity or confusion, that confusion that Wade spoke of. We realize that in that space, the service model becomes dramatically more complicated. Today, our members call us for everything from a power outage for energy rates to discuss renewables, and so we are a one-stop shop, if you will. And in the competitive space, it introduces a number of REPs that are in that marketplace, focusing not so much on the long-term customer relationship as they are on maybe a much more temporary sales cycle or transition cycle. So we're looking at this very closely. We want to make sure that we are looking out for all of our members. We do see that in the competitive space, the very savvy shopper is able to go out and put in place short-term or terms up to a year at times that may look very attractive. We want to make sure that we're protecting all of our members as we contemplate the future.
Thank you. And Mark, it turns out that only one co-op or muni did actually opt in for the deregulated market. What are your experiences and observations? I know that you're not the one that opted in. You're also out. And you know, how have you observed what's going on, and has that had an impact on Bluebonnet?
Well, first of all, as we study it, really no co-op has opted in for competition. The one co-op that did had a unique opportunity to buy retail meters from his parent company that made a lot of sense for them to do that. And that really forced them into that model, more so than anything else. And we've studied them as we've studied every other model. I'll answer it a little bit differently from just a co-op perspective because I actually happened to be engaged during all of the discussions on Senate Bill 7 when I was at the LCRA and was at that time president of the Texas Public Power Association. So I spent my career in public power, but I'm a history major, I'm not an engineer, and so I get it that the New Deal is over, and most of what went into the creation of the New Deal from a regulatory perspective, it's simply not relevant anymore. That's not why co-ops should exist. We don't have some unique model that we should exist as a closed monopoly because no one else can do what we do. That day is long gone. For rural utility, it's about investment. It's how you invest the dollars that allow you to open up in the first place. And it's been a very, very expensive journey for every utility that's done it. You know, my personal opinion is that I think the opening up of the wholesale market as a part of the deregulation scheme has been very, very successful. The retail competition, I believe from a price perspective, it's a bit mixed. And the reason is you didn't change the generation set. The average customer or member that walks in and says, I can't stand you, and I wish we could open up for competition. Well, What they don't realize is that to open up for competition is to make a choice about generation, not to make a choice about who's actually going to be running your wires. So I hate to tell them this, but it's like, well, dude, you're never firing us. We just become a wires company and you get your bill from somebody else, but we'll still be on your street. It's not, and it's like, oh, well, I don't like you. And I said, well, it doesn't really work that way because there's no model in the country where they deregulated the wires company for a good reason. You touch that wire, it'll kill you. I mean, nobody's ever seen a kilowatt. And we're still delivering that product the way it has to be delivered. So deregulation has been about generation, and the generation set hasn't changed. So if you take the long-term view of the cost, it's a bit mixed. What I think deregulation, though, has done, it's brought an opportunity for technology to take a stronger foothold in the market. Those that have opened up are finally getting around to offering the retail products that are different. And yeah, it's forcing folks like us to say, well, I'm not going to tell our folks you can't have this product or that product. In fact, we're going to offer better products than the average rep. And we think we do.
I can relate that when telecom deregulation occurred. I was on the side of, this is great, it'll open up competition, it'll allow for a great deal of innovation to occur. From my parents' perspective, though, it's like, why did things just get complicated? It was simple and easy before. I got one bill, I understood it, it came from a company that had been there forever, and now the whole world has changed. So yes, there are very different perspectives that I think can be brought to play from the consumer angle there as well. Well, thanks for those responses. Now, let's switch gears a little bit here to talking a little bit more again about your utilities. And let's look at it through the lens of that tool called a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I'd like each of you to identify a top internal strength and weakness and a top external opportunity and threat to your utility, and then how you are leveraging or mitigating those. And start with you again, Wade, since you have the unfortunate position of being next to me.
Okay. A strength for us is our people. We've got a lot of experience. We've got a lot of knowledge. We understand how the system works. We understand the flow of power. We understand how to interface with our cities, economic development. I really think that's a strength for us. Weakness for us is our people. There's a big gap. We didn't hire for years. I don't know if y'all did, but we didn't hire for years. So we've got a lot of people with 25, 30 plus years of experience. It's bad when I feel like I'm one of the young guys in the room. And then we've got a lot of employees that have 10 or fewer years of experience. And so it's really, how do you close that gap? I had a chance to sit with a number of our younger engineers and say, well, what do you need? What can I do to help you? And they said, well, we really hate going to those guys that have 30 years of experience because they're so busy and they're so knowledgeable about what they're doing. And what I need to ask them is really not that big a deal to them, but we don't have those people in the middle that we can go ask. And so I think our job as managers is really closing that gap. What can we do to get the folks with 7 years of experience to be the middle so that the newer engineers that are coming in have someone to go to and that we are transferring that knowledge. And so I really see that as both ends of that for us. An opportunity right now is, the Texas economy is booming. The oil field's booming. We serve a lot of the Eagle Ford Shale. We serve a lot of the Permian Basin. I stayed in a Hampton Inn in San Angelo, which we serve, 2 weeks ago, $289 a night. I want y'all to think about that. Holiday Inns Express, the same price. So I'm not giving a shout out just for them, but the point is that the economy there is really booming. That's giving us an opportunity in many cases to rebuild parts of our system and to make it more reliable. A lot of those places we talked about in the oil field, they're not the strongest parts of our system in the state, and so it's really an opportunity. We work with our co-op customers. We have a number of customers that are co-ops where we're able to build the transmission that's necessary to serve those areas. So I really see the opportunity for us right now. We've got a lot of old equipment, much older than me in many times, and it's given us an opportunity to reinvest to provide more reliable service for our customers and to modernize our grid.
And any threats?
Well, you know, we're a regulated entity, and so most everything we do is done through the stakeholder process. And I think the threat is that we don't stay engaged. We have to be engaged in that process. We have to be engaged with our customers. We have to be engaged with the other stakeholders. We've got to make sure that our voice is being heard, and we also have to make sure we're hearing the other voices to help guide what we do.
Very interesting. Cheryl, let's get your take on your SWOT analysis for Austin.
Yeah, I think the strengths that we bring, and I think one is our reputation for being innovative and kind of taking a leadership role in some of the things everybody's talking about. So we talk about and act upon things, right? So renewable energy, a good example. A strength for us to go out and be early adopters of really bringing renewable and using the opportunity to have in ERCOT, where we've actually created the infrastructure needed to bring renewables to our customers in terms of the transmission system, bringing that to them. So it's a strength to be able to respond to good ideas. Electric vehicles. You know, not so long ago, Austin Energy took a real leadership role in that when Roger Duncan was our general manager and said, I can see it now. We're going to have all these electric vehicles plugged in and leveraging that West Texas wind. So we're able to be a little bit nimble with our ideas just because we are fairly small. And so that, I think, gives us a little advantage to take that leadership role and bring it forward. A weakness, we have a lot of good ideas. And so we can find ourselves running in a lot of different directions. And as Wade pointed out, you know, it's a challenge to have matched up the staff talent that you need to follow every good idea. So it's a little bit of a weakness to get a little bit ahead of yourself sometimes in terms of all these great ideas, because we do have a creative bunch of people, the ones that we do have, but it's just too much to follow all the good ideas. And so a little bit of discipline sometimes in making sure we've got a good vision across the company to make sure we see how these programs and ideas align. And I think we're really getting there. Some of the things we've been thinking about for 5 to 7 years are really coming together. So opportunities. Another part of our goals when we look at renewable energy and energy efficiency and affordable, we have an opportunity to really get that right, to really take advantage of what's already exists in terms of our generation portfolio and to maximize our distribution system and that portfolio by using energy efficiency and demand response programs and our downtown chillers to really look at best use of all of our resources. And so we're able to bring that together. I think that's a great opportunity so that we don't have to be focused on expanding just one piece of our business, but really looking at how they all fit together, and we can be very efficient in how we optimize those assets that we have. Threats. I think that we see some of the threats not so different than others. Is that, you know, we are really on the edge of, you know, certain distributed generation and solar and some of those great things coming in and really changing our business model. You know, even energy efficiency can really challenge your business model because we're essentially in a business that's been consumption-based forever, and now we're telling people use less, and we're going to help you use less, and so that starts to threaten your income a little bit, you know, and so finding a healthy balance, go back to the opportunities and say, but how can we make that successful for both the customers who are willing to engage in the energy efficiency project, but realizing there is still some fixed cost back here, and so really being efficient in managing that fixed cost. So a wide diversity, sometimes your strength and your threat can be very closely related, I think, at this time in our business.
Well, I think there's kind of that yin and yang about a lot of these answers that I'm hearing. As you said, you know, people's strength and weakness, and, you know, distributed generation could be strength and weakness as well. So, John, let's
Sure.
get your perspective on this too.
Absolutely. Well, Pedernales, really, when you think about strengths, our system has been built incredibly strong, and we've had great people that have been running that system. And you look at the national grid is noted as one of the greatest engineering achievements of the past century, and our co-op has built a very strong system that is delivering some of the best reliability that you could find nationally. And it's one of the marvels of the grid itself is the ability for utilities locally to manage and maintain that level of reliability with great people. So we're very fortunate in that regard. When I began to think about weaknesses and opportunities, they began to intersect pretty quickly, because from a weakness standpoint, our information systems have not kept pace with where we realize that we need to be. We've done some wonderful things regarding meter data management. We're a very, very early adopter to advanced metering early on, or automated metering early on, and that's saved our co-op and the membership, millions of truck rolls, and has been a great tool. But it's time to begin to look at the next era of that. And as I begin to think about opportunities, when we think about some of the technology systems that we've been riding on, we've got some serious opportunities in terms of modernization of the way we architect our grid going forward. We are very rapidly working towards the deployment of a new enterprise-wide bumper-to-bumper software system that will provide us intense capabilities in terms of mobile data, payment kiosk, text information, IVRs tied into websites tied into outage sites tied into call centers, and on and on and on, including behind the scenes back office, complete automation of our work order flow. So we are quickly working towards the adoption of a new software layer that I believe will help us redefine how we intersect with our members in terms of the opportunity. Additionally, because we were early adopters on some of the initial technologies, but have been a little slower in the recent years in terms of those deployments, we now have a substantial opportunity to bring great value through technology deployments, whether that's the 21,000 miles of distribution system we operate, monitoring and managing those voltages for better conservation efficiency, distribution automation that can help us restore power even more rapidly, and also technologies that start to intersect even in a tighter partnership with our members, like distributed solar and those sorts. So I think there's a number of opportunities that are within our grasp here in the near future, and we have a very enthusiastic team about pursuing those. When I think about threats, there are a couple of areas that I think, particularly here in the state of Texas, one area that we have to get our arms around is the ability, and this ties back to the information system, but the ability to very, very carefully navigate any volatility in the ERCOT market. The past 3 months we've seen price spikes on single day events that have cost have cost consumers millions, tens of millions of dollars. And in looking at that, today we've got price caps in the $4,500 range. That's 100 times the typical cost per megawatt hour. That rate is expected to double in coming years. And so when you think about when these peaks occur, at night, in the dark, freezing temperatures, you've got systems like pool pumps, for instance, that might be running because they're trying to keep the system from freezing up. You're going to run that for an hour or two at the cost of, today, 100 times what it would normally cost, and in the future, a cost of 200 times. You can run the thing all year in some of the costs that are going to get compacted into just a few hours throughout the summer and the winter. Where we've got to advance on the opportunity side of this is co-ops and for the most part, public power, have gone to great lengths over the years to protect their consumers and their members from volatility and spikes. To the extent that we do that, we are also shielding our members from the reality of the pricing model. And so we have a bit of a dilemma to think through in terms of how do we provide our members the best price, the most security, the most stability, protect them from spikes, but also get the most participation in a market that is going to weigh heavily on us if we don't get off peak and we don't have the right kinds of rates. So that really ties back to the information systems, is why we're focusing on those so extensively right now. We have to make sure that collectively as a member-owned co-op, we're working with our members in aggregate to do very smart things during times of the year, but especially during those key hours.
I keep hearing this communications theme echoing through what everyone's saying. Mark, what are your thoughts again about the SWOT analysis for Bluebonnet, and what's unique and different for you?
Well, let me talk about communication again. I have to answer it somewhat the same way. I would say, obviously we're a small utility. with a large service territory. I mean, for anyone in the area that, you know, watched us go through the largest wildfire in the history of the state of Texas, I think, you know, we proved the ability of 265 people to perform in a pretty remarkable way. So certainly, you know, each of us in this industry is blessed with tremendous men and women all across this state who do an amazing job. In many ways, the same way it's been done for a long time. Somebody drives out in the middle of the night, climbs up on a pole when it's really cold and really wet, and fixes it. And technology really hasn't changed our industry much when it comes to an outage. Hopefully it will, but to this date in our history, it really hasn't. So there's that, and it's important. But along with what, you know, these folks are saying, I would say our greatest strength is technology. We made a commitment in 2004, so that's a long time before anybody's talking about the smart grid. We made a whole hog commitment to technology in 2004. 7 miles per meter density, we adopted SAP as our operating platform. And we put it in within 10% of budget ourselves, working with consultants. It's got to be the hardest thing in the world you could ever do. And I think the only reason that we were successful is that we just developed the mantra that SAP would change us. We weren't going to try to change it. We're a small utility. So we've operated with it. We built our own MDM with Siemens. We teamed up with them a few years back and kind of were their first lab rats, if you will, in terms of building their first MDM, and we were eMeter's first AMR web portal. We did not go to the full smart meter. I guess we're kind of smart in that we use an AMR technology, and that really is a lead into what would be, I would say, one of our weaknesses, or one of the things that we're really the most concerned about. So if you Google us, you'll see that we have a very significant advanced technology, particularly for a small utility. Every one of our members has access to their bill broken down on an hourly basis. Every single member, by kilowatt, by carbon, and by dollar amount. And we text them if their usage spikes by 25, whatever profile. They set their profile on dollars and usage, and we text them or email them soon to call them and tell them that it's spiking. Because it's AMR, it's static data, but it's 8 hours old. And what we've learned along the way is that, and it goes back to what the earlier speaker was saying about folks' tolerances and what they're willing to pay. So you say, what are your greatest challenges out there for our area? It's Wi-Fi. It's rural Wi-Fi. It's that basic. It isn't in a lot of our service territory, and it precludes what we believe are going to be some of the real answers going forward, and that this is not going to be about the meter sitting at the curb. It's going to be more about the thermostat or the capability of the consumer through the Wi-Fi to do things that they want to do in their house, and our ability to do load management through that. But that's when America becomes very rural, Texas becomes very rural. In our opinion, a whole hell of a lot of money has been spent in the wrong place for the wrong thing when it comes to rural America. And so that's a huge challenge for us. It's caused us to stop in terms of where we would really like to go next. The second part of that, it's the real cost. One of the things that our members have learned, because as I said, our members can break their bill down now by the hour. Every single member, from the highest to the smallest home. But guess what? And this is true probably for most of us. The average Bluebonnet bill, nobody's ever met an August bill they like, but the average bill is $122. On the hottest day of the year, you're chasing a 40-cent peak. Take that and price out even a $5 communication charge for cellular data. Doesn't work. Try to price out some of the alternative energy strategies. they don't work when that peak you're chasing is really, becomes real. So we'll get there as the marketplace advances, but our real challenge right now is just waiting for some better opportunities or figuring out how to try to afford them, because when it comes to communication, that's where we've suddenly become a small utility again.
I think that was very interesting. You talked about, you said that you were going to change with SAP, not make SAP change for you, because I've seen that as a consultant with a number of different entities, not just utilities, but they would like to take the technology and make it adapt to their existing business processes and the way they are accustomed to doing things without thinking about maybe we have to change the processes. And yeah, again, that gets back to a challenge around people and the communications factors. Mark, I'm going to continue the conversation with you and move on to one more question that I want to pose to all the panelists, and then I'd like to start seeing people lining up here to ask questions too, because we're getting to about that point in the conversation here. So start coming on down here where I can see who's standing up at the mics here so that we can start getting your questions too. So, you were talking about the challenges of communications with your stakeholders and your customers. So what do you see as the most disruptive technology for your utility, and why? And is it something that you're planning to invest in to make some changes in your organization?
Well, as I said, we already have. I mean, we're all in. And I don't mean this, John's been out to our place and he's helped us tremendously, because I don't know that we're going to stay with SAP. Having the courage to leave one system if a better, more affordable system comes along, that's a bit of courage that he's inputted to us by coming over and talking. And so we've done that. We're virtually, we have no meter readers, we have no work order closed. Our data goes live from the field into SAP. Everything in our system today is automated. That means right off the bat that stuff that's out in the field has to coordinate with the in the field technology has to coordinate with the corporate technology. So not that wires laying on the ground are not significant, they're hugely significant. But actually for us today, a technology outage has more impact than a power outage. Because for our system, when our system goes down, it's 100% outage. Every line is on the ground from a consumer perspective when our system goes down now. And with 50% of our members accessing online, believe me, they light up the phone when we have a technology outage. It would take a lot for our entire system to be blacked out. So that's how significant things have changed for us when it comes to technology.
John, what are your thoughts there?
Sure. Regarding a disruptive technology, or and the way you posed the question, I may answer it a little bit differently, but let me start with the basis for a member-owned electric co-op. The co-op is the membership is the co-op. And so if there is a technology that is readily available to serve our members or a subset of our members, it is our obligation to evaluate that technology and figure out a way to meet them where they want to be met. And so we are big proponents of distributed energy, big proponents of distributed solar, for instance, and expect to be very active in those areas. So I want to answer your question a little bit differently in terms of disruptive. I think that two things for me that are most disruptive right now with technology. One is that we have not seen the gains yet that we need to see in energy storage, and particularly in highly distributed energy storage. I think that has held us back in terms of where the industry would be. We've seen solar costs obviously drop dramatically. We've seen there's no business risk in that technology at this point. It's a known entity, but the complementary technology of energy storage in a highly distributed fashion will mean a lot for us. It'll mean a lot for us in this energy-only market. It'll mean a lot for us in terms of incorporating renewables and in terms of shaping peaks and overall load shaping. The other area that I think has been highly disruptive, and this goes back generations and decades, is our lack of very, very specific interoperability standards. When you look at our space, there is still too much risk in technology deployments. We've removed a lot of that risk, a whole lot of that risk. I was at a co-op in Florida. We were very early adopters of advanced metering. We put in a full AMI system, but those projects, even 5 and 6 and 10 years ago or so, were very, very tenuous projects. A lot of that risk has been taken out, notwithstanding the telecom issues that Mark is referring to, because that's a huge issue for rural America and for rural co-ops. But we have lacked the specificity and the certainty of the right kinds of interoperability standards, so that we are in a much safer spot regarding the timeliness of technology, regarding the being exacting on the cost of technology, the surety of being able to deploy technology in the right fashion, and particularly for smaller co-op or municipal system around the country, and I've spent a lot of time with both, we need to make this much easier to size up the cost and benefits. And so if there are interoperability hurdles or efficiencies or economies that aren't gained yet through that interoperability, that is a area of cost that's very difficult to remove from the equation. And I would just say, as this grid gets highly distributed, even out to a much more agile, fractal type of grid environment, and we can spend some time talking about that one day, but we're going to have very deep embedded interoperability across all nodes.
That's, there's a lot of, interesting things that you touched on there, and certainly to your point, energy storage is in some ways, very positive disruptor. Cheryl, I know from everything you said already, it sounds like you've already deployed some of these disruptive technologies. So let me just change it a little bit. How about in terms of policies or anything else? There are disruptors there that you're looking at, and how are you addressing them?
Yeah, policy around a lot of those things that John talked about can be very disruptive, right? We've tried to be innovative and be leading and offer our customers ways to get into some of those distributed generation technologies. But there's a cost to that I think John is alluding to as well. In order for those things to work when they get here and they are ready to be competitive with grid pricing or bring grid parity to the Texas marketplace, that may be further out than some states, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. And there's actually a lot of new costs and a lot of new technology that we've historically not had. They're going to have to be paid for to enable those technologies to be successful. To really maximize the benefit of storage or of solar at any time, you've really got to have information all the way down on your distribution system, not just at the customer meter point, but to make it work, it's got to be useful to a lot of customers, right? So that you're not only getting benefits to just a handful of customers, but your system is smart enough to know when to go into storage mode, when to, you're producing, this person's not home, they're producing, we want that energy to be used. Is now the right time to use it, or should it be stored? So I think those are types of systems that we've not had in the past that are going to have to be paid for, either by the customer who adopts those technologies or by utilities, by embedding storage throughout our distribution system and using that. But that's a lot of policy change, because those are brand new costs. Those are things that we haven't paid for before, and they may be things that are not widely adopted. And so the equity of finding the ways for those to be viewed in our rate structure across our customer classes is going to be complex, because a lot of those things probably fit more into the residential space than they do with our large industrial customers. It would be hard to envision a large chip manufacturer being able to, kind of go off the grid per se with something like solar and storage, as opposed to deciding to be in the generation business with a larger, more traditional piece of generation asset. So it's going to be complex for us all to think through that. And I think that discussion is out there active in this country of how to make sure that we are successful at deploying those types of assets, but that we also recognize there's a cost to managing that better. Managing energy better is not cheap.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly, I think you're right that everyone's going to have a different tolerance level for, I could tolerate 5 minutes of outage, in a year's time or in a month's time or every day. Everyone's got their different tolerances there.
But for most, it's pretty much zero, because we are so
I was gonna say,
tied to
where's
our
that
devices. Do you guys
I
have
was
all
going to say,
those?
where's that customer? Where's that member?
PG&E territory.
Okay.
So I'd like to turn that question back over to you, Wade, to get your perspective as well on
Great.
What are the disruptive technologies or policies that are confronting your utility, and what are you doing about it?
Yeah, I really like to view them as evolutionary, not so much as disruptive, whether it's, our IT systems for our customers. Customer expectations are increasing every day. And it's really how can we use those systems? In our case is how can we work more closely with the retail electric providers to ensure that they're providing the services to the million-plus end-use meters that we have. My grandmother, who's 97, is one of those customers that's okay with 5 minutes or more. Because she'll tell me, I remember when the REA brought power to my house, and she's tolerant. My kids go berserk if there's a blink, right? Power quality is very important now, and so I think that's something we have to work on. You talked a little bit about smart grid, really, and things need to be interoperable. We've got to get to a point where that's the case. That's not the case today. I would argue our transmission system's been pretty smart for a long time. Our distribution system is not. Customers still have to call us to tell us there's an outage. We're getting past that, but all the systems are going to have to work together. So I would agree with you. And even if that's integrating distributed generation or storage, working on the policies for those, all of those, I would agree, are evolutionary right now for our industry. I see us as the wires company as being the ones that need to be integrating all of these things. And so the real challenge for us is to be the integrator, whether it is battery storage, whether it's rooftop solar, whether it's low energy reclosing devices that'll facilitate distribution automation, whether it's the smart meters and what you do with all that data now that it's coming in. I see it as our role is really to be the integrator of all of that. That's why I really see it as evolutionary for us at this time.
Utility as integrator, that's a very interesting perspective, and I think there's a lot to that because it gives you an opportunity to have many different value-added services then, and takes you beyond that fixed cost and how much are you consuming kind of relationship. Okay, I can't see very well from here. Are there any questions that we have in the audience?
Yes, I wanted to sort of add a disruptor and hear your response. And the disruptor, you mentioned the Bastrop fire. Fires, floods, climate change, these are new drivers that you all haven't had to deal with in the past. And I'm wondering how you're incorporating into your planning that disruptive factor of how we need to get off of fossil fuels and onto renewables.
Who would like to start with that question?
I can start with that because I think that, we're pretty aware as a community, I think, and that's one thing that a municipal utility can bring to the table is that we can represent the interest of our community. And our community certainly is keenly interested in moving away from fossil fuels, and that's why we've pushed forward at Austin Energy to kind of even bring in our renewable goals early. Our goal is 35% renewables by 2020. We expect that we'll get there in 2016 with the current purchase power agreements that we have in place. But it's been a much more complex discussion talking about how to get off some of our existing assets. But I think we're well positioned, right? Regulation has not really driven this country yet to have a national energy policy that really supports that transition yet. And so we're trying to do it in as cost-effective way as we can, but also diversifying and reducing our risk by bringing more renewables in and the enabling things like the distributed solar and things like that for our customers. But we certainly also look at the management of that system and things that we didn't have to consider in the past. We had a substation underwater during the most recent floods here in Austin for the first time ever. And so our planning cycle for infrastructure has got new things to look at, not only on the generation and the resource side, with an eye towards some future date when perhaps we get rid of our fossil fuels, but also how we build the infrastructure and site the infrastructure across the whole business.
Who else would like to? Mark?
No, I would just say, I did mention, the wildfire, and obviously in any of our natural disasters, all of us are seeing how technology is a huge factor in improving our response times. But to the heart of your question, I would answer it this way, and it would be the same answer to us 30 years from now. One of the things that I think that our industry is the most guilty of is just fundamentally not really understanding what it is we do for a living. At Bluebonnet Electric, one of the things that we just constantly try to remind ourselves is that we do not sell kilowatt hours. That is not what we do for a living. We provide the service of electricity. And so these things that we're talking of here today, whether they're policies, technology, a lot of them are disruptive because our rates are not transparent, because none of us as utilities have really had the courage to just charge you the $39 that it costs to deliver your service. We all have these hidden minimums where we charge you $9 a month or $20 a month, and then we get the rest as a wires charge for consumption. But what we're doing in that is not really telling you that it costs $36 to $40 a month just for you to be on the grid. And if we just had the courage, and we don't yet, if we just had the courage to get to that step, that would be huge. So you take technology, the ability for the member to know what they're doing. You have wires cost distribution being cost on a more honest, transparent basis. I think then both the consumer and the marketplace should respond. If somebody invents a battery, we're going to haul batteries. If somebody invents a way for your house to be a power station, then we're going to hook up home-based power stations. Our job is to provide you electricity and to have you connected to the grid to the extent. That's what we do for a living. We don't own and run power plants. We don't sell electricity. We provide the service.
I think we have about 5 minutes left, if my clock is accurate here. Do we have, while someone else is answering the question if they want to, we have to cut now? Oh,
We have 3 in this.
we have how many minutes left? 0 minutes. Oh, okay, wow. This went by faster than I thought it would. And it went by fast. But I want you all, please, to join me in thanking our panelists, Wade, Cheryl, John, and Mark, for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.